or at least delay the promotion of your kids if their anemia is detected and they don't take treatment to increase the hemoglobin. This was written about a year ago. I still have no response from it. I said it's high time we do not allow our future to go up from one level of college to another college unless they are taking treatment or they are diagnosed or do in all colleges, find out what is the anemia, treat them, bring up the hemoglobin, they'll be much better, they'll concentrate much better, we'll have a much better future. No one's bothered by them, no one cares at that. Hemoglobinopathies are common in us. In Mumbai especially, we see a large amount of ethnic population. Navi Mumbai also has an ethnic population. So you will see thalassemias and sickle cells and spherocytosis and other RBC membrane disorders. I just picked up one child who came to us from Dubai with recurrent jaundice. He's got pyridine deficiency. So a lot of things can be picked up. They might be causes for anemia. As we treat more and more patients on the clinical side, you will get more and more samples of patients who are surviving malignancies, who are surviving because of dialysis, and they will end up having anemias, which are anemia of chronic disease. And we want to know that because we can treat them with erythropoietin and not blood transfusion. So that makes a lot of difference to us. This is becoming more and more common. E6PD will always be there because it's a genetic problem. Sometimes we get immune-mediated destruction like autoimmune hemolytic anemia. Spherocytosis of the hereditary nature. Very important, but not as common. So you won't be seeing it as often. But if you've got a patient whom I described earlier, splenomegaly, jaundice, recurrent jaundice, think of this. And of course, don't forget that sometimes anemias, malignancies can come with graph of anemia. You have to look at this much better. I'm going to give you a little bit of a panoramic view of what clinicians do from the anemia point of view. And you'll see what is the role of the pathologist. The most important role of the pathologist. How much ever I try to diagnose clinically, I need information from the lab to give a diagnosis. So I might have history, I might have a physical examination, I might reach an appropriate diagnosis, but I need pathology to give us a proper answer. So investigation is of paramount importance to me. The whole idea of doing history in detail and examination is to hone me down to the investigations that I'll spend least on and get the maximum benefit. That's the whole idea. But ultimately, if I'm thinking of nutrition anemia, I need an iron study or a ferritin and B12 and show that it is low to confirm my clinical suspicion. In today's world, it is necessary to have that information on paper. And therefore, I would say all are important. This for me to do this and this from you so that I get accurate answers. When I'm in, as a clinician, when I'm sitting, I classify clinical anemias like this. So when I'm talking to my patient, I'm literally telling them either you are not making blood production for, you're destroying what you're making, or you're losing what you're doing. Production, destruction, and loss. This is the clinical classification of anemia. Whenever I talk to them. And the production failure usually is deficiencies, and the destruction is usually hemolysis because of whatever, spherocytosis or autoimmune hemolytic anemia malignancy. And loss, as in females, for menstrual blood loss. Any female having a menstrual blood loss on the second day, where there are clots, third day there are clots, you know it is excessive. And that is the cause for anemia. Patients are taking aspirin and say that yes, intermittently they pass black colored stools and not taking oral iron. That is significant blood loss. It's important. Patients who have got enlarged prostates, sometimes they have prostatitis and they have immaturity. Very important. It's called blood loss. So that's the clinical classification. Based on what the CBC is, we clinically classified, now we have to classify on the CBC that you have given us. We classified them into hypochromic microcytic anemia, normochromic normocytic anemia, or a macrocytic anemia. The reason being that for us it makes a lot of difference. Like a mantra, for hypochromic microcytic anemia, we've got 5 differential diagnoses. So if you give me a CBC report which shows hypochromic microcytic anemia, I think of these 5 things first, rather than all the other things. So there are iron deficiency anemia, thalassemia, whether it's alpha or beta. Then there is lead poisoning, anemia of chronic disease, and sideroblastic. Of these 5, 4 can be picked up on peripheral smear itself or by investigation. The sideroblastic anemia needs a water. Okay, but it's very important for me. It's very easy for me to pick up the differential by doing a good CBC. Anyone wants to give an answer on this one? Oh, yeah, only written hypochromic. Any thoughts on this? You're seeing lots of platelets, neutrophils, lymphocytes, you're seeing RPC, nice central area of pallor. See, what is important here is that the size of the cells of the RBC are not varying too much from one to another. Usually this is what happens in iron deficiency anemia. Usually uniform. This is an established iron deficiency anemia. Good central area of hypochromic microcytic. And of course, we treat them with iron, they should be good. On the other hand, if you see more areas of pallor, odd kinds of cells with odd kinds of sizes, you know that this is going to be something more, and this is actually thalassemia in nature. You might even pick up nuclear RBC. You've never seen iron deficiency. No iron deficiency anemia will have an RBC. Okay, so that your diagnosis is incorrect if you have an RBC. Or there might be iron deficiency, but there's something else happening to your patient. Think of something else, revise the diagnosis. And I don't know if you can appreciate it, but there are some basophilic stippling here. And this is a person who's got lead poisoning. And you can pick up these things many times, with all due respects, Ayurvedic therapies. Some of the quackeries of Ayurvedic therapy, we have seen this happening. We stopped it, we given pyridoxine for a period of 3 months, the hemoglobin starts gradually rising up. That's the only thing, stopping the therapy is most important. So underlying cause has to be treated, then only there will be reversal. Otherwise, you keep giving this person iron after iron of one company to another company and a third company. This is a situation where you're seeing that there are some normal looking cells and there are smaller looking cells which are hypochromic. You've got some odd teardrop cells also over here. This is not B12 deficiency. This is a differential of normal cells and smaller cells. In dimorphic anemia, there are bigger cells, normal cells and smaller cells. That's why the RUW of nutritional anemia is large. Because there are big cells, small cells, normal cells. So the cell distribution is big to increase. This is a situation where you've got normal cells and smaller cells. You've got only two population of cells, normal and small. This is one of the clinical tips for you to pick up for hypochromic microcytic anemia to suspect sideroblastic anemia. If you do a bone marrow, you could show ring sideroblast, and such people need only pyridoxine therapy, high dose pyridoxine therapy, and they do very well. And very well means the hemoglobin at least becomes stable, might not come down. So if you have to decide iron deficiency anemia for hypochromic microcytic anemia, on the basis of CBC alone, you can pick it up how you'll have a low, all five things, low hemoglobin, low RBC count, low MCV, low MCH, and low MCHC. All five will be low. This is iron deficiency. That's it. There is no second thought about it. If you have beta thalassemia, of course you can do a hemoglobin electrophoresis. But on the CBC, how can you pick it up? Of the same five, the RBC count will be normal and the MCHC will be normal. Both these two tell you the amount of iron in the blood, the concentration of iron in the blood is adequate, so MCHC is normal. And the RBC count is normal, so it's not a production fault. This is a very big thalassemia just on a CBC. Very simple. So, such people you can tell them to do hemoglobin electrophoresis and pick up the answer. And for the previous one, you need not do hemoglobin electrophoresis. We have been told, and I'm sure you also know, that when there is concomitant iron deficiency and B12 deficiency, don't do hemoglobin electrophoresis. There is a lady in Delhi who has shown that even if there is nutritional anemia and there is an underlying thalassemia, you can still pick up the thalassemia by doing the hemoglobin electrophoresis upfront. Now the Delhiites say yes and the South say no, don't do it. Replace and then do the hemoglobin electrophoresis. So still there is a fight going on. But she's got good data to say that you can do hemoglobin electrophoresis even when there is iron deficiency of B12. As you know, iron deficiency can mask the A2 level and keep it on the lower side, and B12 therapy can actually give a false higher A2 value. So you might actually call a person thalassemia and the person will not. So that's the issue. I have decided to take the middle path. I treat first and then do the hemoglobin. Because there is no rush for hemoglobin. There is no life-saving measure meant for thalassemia. So why not treat with iron, B12, let everything get better, then we do hemoglobin electrophoresis. So after all, just a practice. In macrocytic anemia, again we have a mantra, where is myelodysplastic syndrome up front, then there is liver disease and hypothyroidism, hemolysis, myelodysplasia, myeloma. So for macrocytic anemia, my thought process changed, but most of the time it is B12 deficiency. And if you pick up these Howell Jolly bodies, you know that you are dealing with the most likely a B12 deficiency. So one smear, look at the macrovalocytes, nice one, you'll be able to pick up straight away that this is a B12 deficiency. G6PD, we've discussed it, it's very simple, on a peripheral smear itself we can pick it up. Sometimes you have to do additional investigations for anemia, and there's a whole list, that's why hematologists are considered to be very expensive fellows. उसके बाद जाता है 5,000 रुपया का है. So, but sometimes we have to try and get the answer by investigations, and this is the only way to do it, because today's world of evidence-based medicine. In anemia, where to do a bone marrow, it's always a problem if, as a pathologist, you're sitting on the microscope and you're squirming in your seat, you're not sure, there's no answer coming, you know it could be this or the other, but it's not fitting in either of them, then you might want to do a bone marrow just to see that you don't miss anything. If you look at the neurologists, they'll do 10 LPs. In our undergraduate days, we have been told that do 10 LPs, if you get 2 positive, it's good. But 8 people have undergone it unnecessarily. No one talks about it. Everyone talks about those 2 which are going to diagnose. I thought bone marrow, it's a painful procedure, it's under local anesthesia, I know it's OPD now, I do it on OPD basis. But after all, you're sticking a needle into a man or a woman to try and get an answer. So at least the strike rate should be better. So I generally don't do bone marrows unless I'm convinced that routine blood investigations have been unable to achieve a diagnosis. But when you're dealing with patients who can't afford vitamin B12, if you do vitamin B12, iron, this, that and the other, it comes to about 3, 4, 5,000 rupees. A marrow is cheaper. I will give much more information. For those of whom cannot afford, I say, boss, it's better to do a marrow. Because I'll rule out everything, malignancy, iron deficiency, vitamin deficiency, everything will come up on that smear, pure red cell aplasia, you name it and I'll know it. Because you're going to the root cause. So sometimes I have asked to do bone marrow earlier because I can save some money. I don't like to do therapies. As pathologists, you don't want to know about therapies. But based on your reports, I'm able to decide what therapy to give. Should I go straight for blood transfusion? Should I give a combination of iron and vitamin? Should I give iron, vitamin plus erythropoietin? So from a good CBC report, I am able to make therapeutic decisions as to what to give next to my patients. It makes a lot of difference. The whole idea being, I don't want to give blood as much as is possible. Because you know that a lot of problems can occur with blood. Commonly asked questions to you as pathologists and to me as clinician is that I am thalassemia minor, doctor has told me don't give me iron. So please remember, there's nothing like that. You can give a thalassemia minor iron provided there is iron deficiency. And I've got several of them who have unnecessarily not taken iron because of the fear of taking iron. And when they take iron, the hemoglobin comes up to a healthy 9.5, 10 from 7, and they lead a much better life. So please don't deny them a quality of life for things which are myths. If there's science behind it, different matter. But there's no science behind it, then this is a myth. So you should be able to get it.